Welcome back to the Through It All podcast. I am your host, Seth Wieler.
And I'm your other host, Aiden, Wolfe. We're really glad you guys could join us today.
Thank you to
Our host,
Scott and Heather Langelaar. Would you take a moment to introduce yourselves, say hi, and tell us a little bit about who you are?
I'll go first.
You bet.
Okay, I'm Heather. I'm married to Scott.
Yes.
And at this point, that's the only thing I am. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a mom. We have 5 kids.
We're not quite at 18 years, but we're almost there. And yeah, got 5 beautiful kids, and we're living the dream.
That's awesome.
Good to hear.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start off with a nice, light, and easy question. How did you guys meet?
Oh, well.
We were starting to
Yeah.
get older and more desperate. So we let our family set us up.
We got set up. Yeah, it was a setup. But I will admit, I had an active part to play in some of the setup, like some of it, because they were trying to set us up. I think Heather was kind of like willfully getting set up, but from my end, after the initial meet, I was definitely pushing. So for more meets, but it was good.
So I knew his brother,
Yeah.
and he knew my brother, so they kind of worked.
They
it out.
hatched it out, got us together, and then from there on, it was
Pure bliss.
Yeah, it was stars all the way. Yeah. Yeah, I was living in Calgary at the time and framing houses. Heather was nursing. And yeah, it just worked out that we met and we kind of hit it off pretty fast. It was pretty good. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where to start. I have a lot of questions.
Oh, boy.
Oh, no.
A lot of questions.
Just go for it.
Will Dylan be grounded later for leaving his underwear on the couch?
We won't ground him, but we will enforce some hard labor consequences.
I don't believe in grounding. I believe in firm and painful consequences instead of grounding. So yes, there will be punishment. Yes.
Mr.
Right.
Gunther, if you
That's
have
good to hear.
questions, you can just, talk to Dylan.
Yeah.
Wait, are all your questions just about his underwear?
No, that was the only one, actually.
We do apologize about
Yeah.
the underwear incident.
Yeah, that was very shameful. We will deal with that. Yes.
So, you guys, you're living in Calgary when you meet. Is Heather also living in Calgary?
No, she lived in High River with her family. She drove into Calgary all the time though for work because she was working at Rocky View Hospital. And
I did live in Calgary, but my roommate first burnt down our house, and then
yeah.
in our second house, she got engaged. So I was like,
Yeah.
you keep the place.
But when I met you, you were living with your parents.
Yeah, I
again?
was back at my parents' place.
Yeah. Yeah, and we met at her brother's place, actually. It was set up there. That's where we first met. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're in the same province, but there is a distance between you.
well, my family had already moved to Saskatchewan. I grew up in Pinoka, Alberta. So that's just about, an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 north of Calgary. And we grew up there dairy farming, and my family moved to Saskatchewan when I was like 18. So I finished my last year of high school here or in Alberta, and then joined my family shortly thereafter, and then went to college in the States, and then kind of, went around.
That's why we were getting older by the time we met.
Yeah, we were 24, 20, just a tail end of 23 when we met. So, yeah.
Very cool.
So, how has your relationship changed or matured over the years?
Well, you want to take that one?
Oh, well, I think as we grow up and become more mature, we learn more how to give and not just take and live more. Well, I'm more submissive now than I used to be, right?
Yes, yeah. I would say the niceties of getting to know each other when you're younger, maybe for us, not all couples are this way, but you have ways of doing things, expectations of each other that you have when you first get together. And I think a lot of fights originate from those like unmet expectations that you have of one another.
Or not knowing each other well.
That's what I mean, right? Like
I'm more of an introvert and Scott is
Yeah.
very much an extrovert. He loves people.
yeah.
So when we first got married, I worked in a hospital and saw people all day, and Scott was at home running the farm and saw no people all day.
This is what we're talking about, expectations. I expected that we would go and do these things.
I would
right?
go home
Like,
from work and he'd be like, "Oh, let's go see these people and do that thing." And I'm like, "No, I just want to
she
veg
expected
out and
to
go
totally
to bed."
be at home and just relax and rest, right?
Right.
Like those were, we just assume, you assume the other
Because when
person
you're
thinks the
dating,
same as you, right?
you're more like going out and doing stuff and seeing people. And that took us a little bit to figure that out.
So the maturity side of it is that I feel after 18 years, you start to learn the things that define the way you think, right? That each other think. And I definitely make a lot of mistakes still, but I don't tend to necessarily be surprised by those types of reactions from her. And I know for sure she's not surprised by some of those reactions from me. I'd say it changes your arguments, because now you're not arguing from like, what is this? But instead you're like, okay, so how do we continue to work with this? Or how do we fix this, knowing that this is the way it needs to be, right? So I guess that's probably more when you talk about maturing. That's, yeah. You learn each other better.
And you learn what to let go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you also
don't
learn,
need to fight about everything.
Yeah, you also learn there's no point in holding on to certain things that you used to hold on to when you were younger, right? So some of those expectations I had when I was first married, you don't have them anymore, because you realize that they were kind of not realistic at all for a good and healthy marriage. So,
Right.
Have you guys heard of love languages?
I've heard of them, but
like as in like a,
like the 5 love languages.
oh, okay, I've heard of it, but yeah.
Physical touch, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Ways to communicate love towards one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last episode we were recording, or not the last one, but one of the other ones, Mr. and Mrs. Lowen were talking about love languages as something that they've studied, because Mrs. Lowen has a degree in psychology, correct?
I thought it was something like that.
Something like that. So they talked about how you and your partner can have different expectations and different ways of showing love, and how that can kind of cause division, or you don't know how to deal with that. And when you're talking about being an extrovert, being an introvert, and
Those are two very different
polar opposites, right?
Yeah.
So I can see how that would cause problems almost.
Oh, totally. Because I would get charged up on hanging out with people, and she'd be draining herself out, and I would just be like, "This is great. Let's do more. Let's do," and like it's just fueling me more and more and speeding me up, and she's draining out, right? Or vice versa. If we don't see lots of people for a long time, she's feeling great and she wants to keep it like, let's relax, let's do this, and I'm like, and I'm dying from that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
How have
So
you?
we both have to compromise.
yeah, we have to
Yeah.
compromise. Yeah.
How have you learned to overcome that? Just compromise.
I think we understand.
Or we'll hang out with, I'll say, okay, yeah, let's do things with people for this many days, but then I'll say, now I need some days off where we don't. And you get that.
That I think the drive of the extrovert is more of the complication. Like it creates the problem more than the introvert does. The introvert is quiet and like holds back and isn't pushing, whereas the extrovert is like constantly driving for more, like to go do this and to go do that, whereas the introvert doesn't suggest all those things, right? So it tends to be that early on in our marriage, I was just inviting people, and I was just like, we're going to go do this and we're going to go do that, until she would explode about
Not explode.
Well, we would have an incident, where the two of us would, clash or collide in a disagreement, and then it would come out. And so I think now for me, what I'm trying to do is, if I know that I want to do certain things, I will not like just plan them. I will like, be like, hey, like this year I said I would like to have like, several events over the summer where we invite several couples to come over for a fire and think about, a night that works for you, and kind of give time leading up to it, so that there's, not just like, boom, hey, so-and-so's coming over.
Yeah.
What?
How did you discover, I guess, that you were extroverted and introverted? Did you take a quiz online or marriage counseling, or?
Was it something
we
you
just-
kind of just figured out?
I think we just figured it out. Don't you
Okay.
think?
I think we kind of,
We didn't know it when we were dating and got married. And I'm not like, I like being with people. I just can't do it all the time. Like, I like going out and seeing people and being with people, but
would you say it was probably when we went to El Salvador that it became very apparent?
I think we already knew it then.
We knew it was like that, but it became like, whoa, yes, this is actually a major thing that we can see.
We went to El Salvador
Yeah.
to see Sponsor Kids. And we were all day, like from breakfast till bedtime with
Yeah.
people
Mm-hmm.
for like 8, 9
like touring
days.
around, visiting Sponsor Kids, seeing projects.
Well, we were with the
and-
group. So we would come, I was fine, but then when we would come back to our hotel room for like an hour before supper, I'd be like, I'm just going to lay on the bed. And Scott would be like, I'm going to go find someone to have coffee with. And that really showed the difference between us.
Yep.
Yeah.
So no, we didn't learn it really. I don't think through it just became apparent. Like, yeah. you just kind of stumbled into that. So
Or maybe we knew it, but we just didn't quite know how to.
we didn't know it beforehand. I didn't
Handle
know it
it.
beforehand.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I was that extroverted, and I don't think I realized you were that introverted.
Yeah.
So
So, what are some small little things that you guys appreciate about each other? I don't know how to word that really. You'd think after this many episodes, I'd be good at wording this one.
Little quirks, little things.
So little things like.
Well, I used to like it when
he leaves his underwear
on
in
the couch. Yeah, but that's.
well, that wasn't mine. That wasn't mine. I don't do that. Yeah.
I just found that. I don't know
Yeah.
where it came from.
I used to like it when Scott used little packets of sugar for his coffee, and then he would always leave them on the counter instead of put them in the garbage.
You like that?
And I actually liked that.
You like that?
I did.
Huh.
I don't know why.
You know what? I actually thought you didn't like that. I stopped doing that because I actually thought you didn't like that.
Better start
No,
it
I
up
like
again.
Yeah, no doubt, eh?
Mr. Langelaar just like, oh, thank goodness.
Well, she made one comment about it like years ago, and I was like, oh, I better not do that anymore. I think she doesn't like that. So
You'll walk in the house one day and you'll just have a cupboard full of
Packets
sugar
everywhere.
packets.
everywhere, all
Okay,
ripped
maybe
open. Yeah.
it's not as endearing as I thought.
The
Yeah.
more the merrier.
Yeah, little things. Well, I really like kind of how Heather's competitive at times in little ways, subtle ways, to try and beat me at certain things, or yeah.
I can shoot a handgun.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a little thing, I guess, that kind of blew me away, that she could shoot better than I could. So that made me really happy. I actually really quite like that.
You like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Pushes you to be a better marksman.
well, it just makes it so that we can share that together, right?
Mhm.
So it's I anything we do together, I quite enjoy. Other little things that you do. Yeah, I like how you probably don't even realize this, but you have your own way of sleeping at night that is your own way.
Oh,
and
stop
that's,
it.
No, it's very dependable, and I like that. So
I didn't used to.
No, it's good, and it's actually I quite like that. So she gets annoyed if she like snores or anything. I really don't mind it. I'm totally fine with that.
I didn't used to snore.
So yeah, it's a little thing.
Until I
It
had
really
5
is a little
kids.
thing. Some people it's a huge thing, but for me it's just a little thing. But
You like that?
I do actually. Yeah, it's you. So
Very interesting.
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't like it when you snore.
I know, but that's not one of the things you like. So yeah.
Time for a little bit more of an in-depth question.
Oh boy.
When I talk about stages in a relationship, stage 1 could be when you meet. Stage 2 is your first date, or however you want to.
Yeah. Those sorts of relationship milestones, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
That's what we should have been saying this entire time.
Milestones.
Dude.
So, what kind of challenges have you faced transitioning into this specific stage? But I don't know, also other ones.
Which milestones in our relationship have we reached, or that have transformed our relationship over the years?
Like, not that specific, but having 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And being
And-
middle-aged.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like for sure, going through the birth of every child changes your viewpoint,
Oh, really?
right? Like one child is a total change up of your life. You're not. It doesn't matter as much
It's
as
the
anybody
biggest-
thinks they're
it's the
ready for it.
biggest
They're not.
change
They're
up,
not ready
yeah.
for that.
Right.
Like mentally, you can think you're ready and all that, but really, it's a lot to adapt to your own kid being born. And then when number 2 comes, that's a whole another league you enter into, and your mind changes yet again. I would say going from 2 to 5, like that's where the switch happened for me. Like, so that was a milestone in our relationship. I was afraid to go more than 2 kids, not being able to physically protect more than 2 kids because I only had 2 hands. So I was like, I can't do more than that because I can't actually, anyway, so it's kind of an interesting thing. That was a real change up for us in our marriage. When I talked to a friend who had many kids, and he shared with me, actually he kind of laughed as I was expressing my fears about all this. And he just laughed and he said, don't you think God has a plan for your kids? And that just struck me, right? Because he's like, Scott, do you think God has a plan for you? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then he's just like, don't you think God has a plan for your kids? And I was like, so true.
Yeah.
That was it. Totally changed my mind. And then we we started having more kids, and then we've had 5, and that was big.
So are you asking what challenges we've had in getting?
Yeah.
Losing
Getting
your
to
dad
this
was a
point.
milestone. That was a
That was a
change up.
challenge,
That was
yeah.
a change up for us. Yeah, it changed. Like, it changed how family visits went. It changed how we view our relationships. Right, that was hard.
Yeah.
So, anytime you lose somebody really close like that would have been a milestone in our relationship. So, yeah. Over the years, I'd say having broken relationships with family members, like as loved ones, losing certain family members due to conflict or, issues or challenges within family. So that's been very hard. That's defined our relationship as we've gone through it. Mm-hmm. COVID was a big milestone, I would say, because that caused a lot of relationships outside to crumble or get tighter. Like, I think it made us tighter, which was excellent. So yeah, watching some families not get tighter, that was very hard to watch. See families fight, but yeah, I think for Heather and I, it definitely drew us closer. So that was a milestone for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so throughout the pandemic, there definitely were a lot of couples that were impacted positively or negatively in both ends of the spectrum very differently. Mm-hmm. And you'd say it was a positive impact for you guys.
That way, yeah.
Well, I'm an introvert, so I liked it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, in that way.
But I mean, like, we're used to being at home together all the time because this is our job here where we live, right? Mm-hmm. So for some people, they're not used to being home together all day, every day. And that is, I guess it depends what you're used to.
It probably had the potential to create a lot of strife because now families were like in a close proximity to one another when they're not used to it. Whereas for us, honestly, I felt like we were very busy right up to pre-COVID. Like, we had a lot on our schedule, a lot of things going on, and that just wiped that out. And we had total, like, just family time, which I actually kind of enjoyed.
Yeah, it was good.
I did. I didn't care for what was happening in our community, like in our country, in our community, with the way people were treating each other. I didn't care for that at all. That wasn't right. But I did like the one thing, which was that nobody had any expectations anymore of you to be here, to do this or to do that, because you could just be like, no, sorry, we're at home now, right? Like, we're just doing stuff together as a family. So that was nice. That was a good side effect of it.
Doing home church was really good.
Home church was
we
excellent.
Did that
yeah,
for quite a while.
Really appreciate.
We had you guys sometimes.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
we went with Scott's family a lot. That was it was really special actually.
It was, yeah. But for us in our marriage, I'd say it was really good that we were unified on how we viewed that. At the beginning, I have to admit I was a little worried that we wouldn't be, based on how, because anytime that kind of scare comes into everybody's mindset of what is this and do we have to get vaccinated, do we not, should we not, all that, all those questions are like, we've gone through those discussions when our kids were young. Do you vaccinate your kids, do you not, like, do the research on all that stuff. That all has the potential to create, one doesn't agree at all and the other one totally is for it, and now you have a rift growing.
Now you have to see if your wife is submissive or not.
Well, it's not that as much as you want to be one together in the way you think about things. It really helps, right? To share the same viewpoint on something that big that impacts your family like that. So
very interesting. Yeah. Heather, you've shared about being submissive, I think, twice now. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's important that women are submissive to their husbands? And like, looking at the way the culture is going, very controversial.
It is. Well, we actually just were discussing this last week. And really? I'll just say, there's something. Have you heard of the crazy cycle?
No.
Have you ever heard of that?
Crazy cycle, yeah.
So this is something for your psychology.
I'm on there lots.
And this causes men and women to fight with each other. And it's when a woman disrespects a man, then he acts unloving towards the woman. And when he acts unloving, it makes her disrespect him, and like, it's kind of like a cycle, right? So the more he acts unloving to me, the more I'm going to be disrespectful to him, and so that's we have learned about the crazy cycle, and we try not to get on it, and we try to recognize it when it's happening, but we just were reading in 1 Peter last week.
Yep.
Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe in the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of your wives. And then the next part goes on
about their beauty and where it
talks
comes
about
from.
their beauty, and then husbands in the same way be considerate as you live
Mm-hmm.
with your wives. Treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life.
Mm-hmm. It's two hand in hand.
So,
Right.
and for me, that goes a little bit with the love and respect cycle,
Mm-hmm.
because if I respect Scott, I will listen to his counsel, and basically, when you're in a relationship and you have a decision to make and you don't agree about it, what are your choices? Like, do we say we can't agree, so now we're gonna split? Or do we say, okay, we can't agree, we agreed when we got married that in the event of that, Scott would make the decision. So then I can choose to submit to him, and, you know, even if I didn't agree. And that's kind of how we keep our marriage strong. And that was something we promised to each other at our wedding.
Yeah.
And if I don't want to do that, then I'm breaking the promise I made, and our relationship is toast. Right?
The respect side of things is like, that's a hard thing for a lot of guys. And it's very easy to just read those verses and read the first portion where it says, wives, submit to your husbands. And, you know, it's very easy to read that and point the finger at your wife and say, hey, you need to submit to me. But every time you read those verses, whether it's in First Peter or any of the other books that talk about submission and marriage and all that stuff like that, and love, you'll see that the husband is also being spoken to in the exact same chapter almost every time. Mm-hmm. And so people shouldn't tend to be like breaking that up at all and splitting those two up. So,
and when you are showing love towards me, it makes me want to respect you, right? Like it really does. It's kind of actually
if I'm being loving,
amazing.
Actively being loving, it makes it easier for her to respect me, right? You want to be someone who is respectable. I don't want to command someone to respect me. I want to be someone who is respectable.
Right.
Because then it's not hard for your spouse to have the ability to respect you. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question.
You've also talked about faith. How important is your faith to you?
Very.
Yeah, quite. I mean, it defines who we are. It directs where we go. It keeps us in line when we want to fall away. It keeps us.
It gives us a common goal that we're pulling towards.
It has defined how we will navigate every difficult decision, or any decision really, that we go through. So, I mean, if we don't have our faith, then you're left to your desires and your wants, right? And if everyone was to live by their desires and their wants, they're going to be led astray, because they change from, day to day, season to season, and year to year, right? So, but your faith is it's what keeps you steady, right? So,
well, and at the end of the day, one of us is going to die. We're both going to die, but one first and then the other.
And we're going to battle sin for the whole
and how
duration
terrible
of our life, right?
would it be if I didn't know that where Scott would be when he died?
Yeah, totally.
It's true, right?
Yeah, that would be very hard.
Like, I don't know how people go through that without faith, honestly.
Yeah, for married couples to be half split on that one, that's very hard. I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah.
How easy would it be, or would it be even possible for two people from completely different religions to get along in a marriage? Like,
atheist and Buddhist.
But that's different too, because like a Catholic and a Buddhist, they've got different beliefs, obviously, but they share the belief of something more. So would an atheist and a religious person be fighting a lot more than two different religions?
I think that depends on what religion the religious person is. If they're a Christian, and if they are trying to win their spouse over, it does speak in the Bible about that, about how a spouse should act if their spouse isn't a believer.
Yeah.
And with the hopes that they would see the witness of their life. Now you'd say, oh, well, ideally a believer wouldn't marry someone who doesn't believe, but it obviously happens a lot.
I think,
or one of them becomes a believer while the other one still isn't.
Yeah.
That can happen too.
I think if you have two faiths together, if they are extremely like faithful to their religion, like extremely tied into it, it would be almost impossible for one to marry another one from a different religion. Right?
Yeah, like if you had a devout Muslim, they
Yeah.
probably would not
They would not
choose to marry a Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you have someone who's nominally Christian and nominally Muslim,
Yeah.
like I could see that being possible, or nominally,
Jewish or Catholic.
you know,
or-
I could see someone who's like nominally Christian and like severely atheist. Those two I could see getting married, and that would have a lot of strife. There would be a lot there. The nominal Christian would be under attack all the time. But if the nominal Christian in that marriage became strong in their faith, and the atheist was to sit there and fight against that nominal Christian becoming a full-fledged believer like that, it would have the potential and the power to change that person who's an atheist. Right? It wouldn't be a very happy marriage that way, though.
Definitely not.
There would be a lot of strife going on. So
Yeah.
and that's hard when you're pulling in two different directions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your mindset like? Has it changed?
Yeah.
How important is that? Is it significant that you have the same mindset? I would assume from what you've talked about that you'd say it is. And what does your mindset include going forward? Yeah.
What did Mrs. Willems say that made you? Because I have seriously thought about that many times.
With the forgive.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you were gonna, and she was how old? And she was
So I
talking about-
had this little friend when I was in university. She was like 90,
yeah.
little Mennonite lady, and she would call us children, and she'd talk about her. She was married for like 60 something years, and she would say, "Forgive."
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to look at them through your fingers.
Through your fingers like this,
you're
yeah.
so mad you can't even look at them. But no, I think our mindset is, as believers, is just living our lives for the Lord and what He is asking us to do. And we have not changed in that in all our married years. And I hope we can grow and mature. And I mean, now we're getting to a different stage because our kids are getting older. And I guess just figuring out what He's going to ask of us as they start growing up and moving out. And will we keep farming? Will we do something else? I don't know.
I think like recently when we've been dealing with, we have a married couple that's having a lot of difficulty, and they're going through a lot of strife right now. They have
Some friends, yeah.
yeah, they have, and they're very close friends, and they've had 5 kids of their own. Now they've fostered 5 kids and adopted them and all, and so the legacy that they're leaving is massive. But they've been getting into some serious like fights like in the recent year and a half. They've been under a lot of stress though, because they've had a lot of negative things happening in their life, right? And it's kind of breaking them down. And I would argue that probably if both of them, when they seriously work on forgiving one another, it has brought them closer together and helped them to work through their relationship over time. Better than anything with me before we were married. You shared that with me, and that always has stuck in my brain. I'm not good at forgiving, but every time that I have ever had the viewpoint of I need to forgive because I am myself forgiven and I need to always work with it, it has helped heal our fights and our issues and helped us work through our challenges in our marriage faster than anything else. So I think if we had that mindset of forgiveness towards one another, I think that's what probably causes most relationships to fall apart, is they won't forgive each other anymore. Right?
Is forgiveness more important than good communication?
Well, I think because you're willing to forgive, or because you have a forgiving mindset,
Like
you are willing to
sometimes
communicate.
Sometimes you can communicate to the very end of
Yeah.
the words you can use, and you still haven't resolved it.
You haven't
yeah.
And then at
passed that
some point,
step.
one of you has to soften your heart, or both
Yeah.
of you,
Yeah.
and let it go.
But if you have a forgiving mindset, you're willing to communicate. You're willing to go to the depths you need to go to in order to resolve an issue, right? So, yeah. It's pretty hard to fight with somebody who won't fight with you, right? Like, it's very easy to fight with somebody who has their gloves up, right?
Yeah.
And is ready to go. But it's pretty hard to sit and punch somebody like over and over in the face and they won't hit you back, right? Like, it's pretty hard. it's demoralizing. It's not a fight. I think the Holy Spirit convicts you pretty bad when you're fighting like that, right? So yeah.
We've got some statistics on the paper. We'll talk about each one of these points separately. The last two are basically the same thing.
So we'll discuss those together.
Yep.
Unless you feel the need to discuss them separately. That's happened
true.
last week.
That's true.
Oh, okay.
People who have been divorced are more likely to get divorced again. The percentage goes from about 40 to 50% to 60%. Both are very high numbers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
A marriage starting at a 50% chance of
That's unreal.
ending. That's like flipping. You could literally flip a coin and say, "Oh, okay, never mind."
I wonder how far back in your stats have you gone? How far back have you gone?
Like
where
how
you've
many
seen that?
years, you
Yeah,
mean?
how far back have you guys gone and looked at the stats?
It was more recent stuff
Yeah,
for younger couples for the most part, from what I remember.
I wonder if you went back like 50 years, what it would show.
If we went farther back, I'm sure we would find much different.
Down to like
statistics.
20% or
Probably.
15%, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because those numbers for sure have gone up, I'd say. Yeah, big time.
When you get married, you just say, we're not doing that.
That is absolutely...
Most people end up saying, or a lot of, because most wedding vows are till death do us part, but with the way that these stats are going, it's more of a till I get bored and want something new.
Well, I don't know if everyone believes the vows that they say.
That's true.
Or maybe they need to be reminded of them. Because people are scared to say it. If divorce is so rampant and so common now, that if I would go up to someone and say, I was at your wedding, you said until death do us part, for better or for worse.
Yeah, what are you doing?
They would be like, you're judging me.
Yeah.
You don't know what I'm going through.
Yeah.
You know, like we kind of live in a world that everybody wants to do what they want and not be judged.
Yeah.
So,
Like, in our discussion with this couple that was having this hard time, they used the word leave with one another. Well, he will.
they've
he
been
might
married
leave.
for over 30 years.
Yeah, and they've got like, and then after we had talked with them for a little bit, and I didn't say this to them, Heather didn't say this to them, but they both agreed never to use that word again. That they would leave one another, because that's insinuating a break.
That
And-
means it's kind of on the table,
Yeah.
and they're like, it's not on the table. We're
It's-
not doing that.
It's an escalating word, right? And so they're like, we will not use that word anymore. And I was like, you know what? That is the change up. That's the way to, if you go into every fight you ever have and you know you're not going to leave each other because you are committed to that.
And you have to keep working to
that you will
work it out.
You know how that changes the fight, right? You know, like it changes it, right? Because you're not too scared to be real now. Right? Because you know that you're not going anywhere and she's not going anywhere either. Right? So that's, I think, what changes it for a lot of people. A lot of people are like, well, if I don't like this anymore, I'm not getting out of this what I want. You know what? Forget it. I'll just start looking at other people, or I'll start looking at what I want. Right? So.
And for some people, it's their spouse that does that, and they don't want the marriage to end,
Yeah.
but the spouse leaves them. That happens.
Totally. Yeah, we've seen that. Yeah.
So,
But yeah, that is a high number. That's an incredibly high number.
Before you saw these statistics, would you have thought that it would be this high? Or?
Yeah, when I took psych in college, it was already like 50%. Like, yeah. So
that's a long time ago.
that was a long time ago. Yeah. So I was like, for me, I was like, oh, I half expected it to be like 70% by now. So
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're
from what I've been watching and seeing, like
Yeah.
couples split even in our own churches, like I'm like, wow, this rate seems to be growing. Like it seems to be increasing. So
Wonder why? Is that because of culture?
I think, culture's getting.
culture updating.
Yeah.
I guess you could say.
I think a lot of people are distracted nowadays. There's so many devices that pull their attention away from one another, and it's getting very easy. Even in Christian marriages, it's getting very easy to be pulled away from each other.
Just to
So,
check out mentally
Yeah.
and do your own thing on
Yeah.
your own phone, on your own screen. You can,
Yeah.
instead of watching a movie as a family, you got one person watching that
Yeah.
and three people watching
Yeah.
their own thing.
Or you
and-
got one who's listening to marriage podcasts all the time, right? And you got one who's listening to.
Is that you or me?
No, I'm just making a joke here.
Better be both of you.
Who's doing it?
We should always listen to the same podcast. Yeah. So, yeah.
We're gonna listen to this podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna listen to these guys. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, sounds good. We're going to look at the numbers here. We were able to find numbers back all the way to 2016. So the number of divorces from 2016 were in a decline. In 2016 and 2017, there were 62,000 divorces, In 2018, 61,000. 2019, 57,000, and then an extreme low of 43,000 in 2020. And then a huge spike up to over 71,000 in 2021. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, totally.
I think during COVID, people didn't go to the lawyer.
Yeah, they just didn't see their lawyers.
But they got
didn't see
mad at each
judges,
other.
but they were set on divorcing. Yeah, that's. I mean,
Is this Canada or?
Yeah.
This
Canada.
is Canada, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. Even like we've been in Saskatoon and there's like a big billboard sign. It says divorce the fair way or
fair
something.
Oh,
way,
I've
yeah.
seen that.
Yeah, and
one.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you're
Advertising
just
divorce.
trying to make it sound so easy
Yeah,
and
yeah.
simple and.
It's become so
Yeah.
socially accepted.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're sitting there having strife with one another, you don't hold the viewpoint of we will stay together no matter what. You're driving down the highway and you see that up on the billboard after you've just had a major fight with one another. Like, what does that seed in your heart, right?
Yeah.
Divorce.
And
the
once
fair
you
way,
start that ball
right?
rolling,
What does it do, right?
That magnifies the hurt, right? If you had a fight, now I'm talking to a lawyer, and now your partner's like, "What? Are we there?"
Exactly.
Like
yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that drop in 2020 was just totally due to nobody could get to lawyers, nobody could get to judges. And then the jump, obviously, is going to be
Because
those who
everything
couldn't.
opened up
Residual.
It's
again.
getting
everything
through.
opened up, and more people are disgruntled because they got forced together in a way that made them even more have more conflict with one another. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, some people, when we talked about, do you think it's the restrictions and people couldn't see their lawyers, and they were like, I wouldn't have even thought of that, which is kind of interesting to me. And others said it's definitely the emotional thing, people getting sick of each other, trying to make it work when they're so uncertain. We've heard someone said it might not have been financially possible if people were laid off.
yeah. But even for us, like just even knowing how in business, everything slowed down. Like you just could not contact certain people. I'm like, yeah, there was so many divorce proceedings that got put on hold because of lawyers. Like, I'm not seeing anybody right now and all that. So I guarantee it had to be part of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Despite the huge divorce rate, 80% of people will get married again. 6% of that 80% will get remarried to the same exact person.
6% get remarried to the ones they divorced.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I call that a success. 6% of them are successful at doing what they should have done in the first place. But
It's kind of sad that they had to go through the whole divorce process to realize that was the one. But it'd be interesting to see what percent of that 6%
Stayed married.
didn't go for round 2 of divorce.
I think few people, when they get divorced, that I've ever come across, ever do it with the intent or desire to repair what they're doing, right? Maybe one out of the two is that way, like, because it's 50-50, right? But few, in fact, I can only think of one situation where a couple split with the whole point of taking time from each other, but they weren't seeing anybody else, neither of them. So I saw that there was potential for them to rework on their issues or challenges, but almost every time it's because somebody's seeing someone else, or now that they're in the separation period, they start seeing other people immediately because they're thinking of themselves only, and they're not actually thinking of what they need to be doing, which is working on their relationships, right? So
Thinking of themselves or loneliness.
yeah, like I had a guy once tell me, like his wife was cheating on him. And he was not unfaithful at all. But as soon as his wife separated from him or pushed for divorce and separation at this point, he started talking like, well, I got to get in shape and, I'm going to get remarried soon, or I'm going to be on the market again. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you talking that way? And he's like, well, just, I'm probably going to be single. I'm like, you don't even need to think about that right now. Like, you got kids, you got things that need to be worked on. You're not even like separated like permanently from your wife. Like that's not even on your radar. Like you shouldn't even be thinking that right now. So I think it changed a little bit of how he felt about that. But I think most people feel that way after they get divorced. Like instantly, oh, who can I be with now, or who can I?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because after doing the uniting with another person thing, it's like you can't
It's
be
hard
on
to
your
go
own.
back to the
Yeah.
single-edged sword compared to the double-edged sword you are as a duo.
Yeah. I would think for most
Well,
people.
and maybe they've lost their confidence and they want to feel good by
Yeah.
getting in a new relationship, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
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 So another one that we found was if the couple has children or a shared business, there is a higher chance of reaching reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that since you guys
Yeah.
share a business?
Yeah, we have children and a shared business. So, I mean, I think there are couples who know that it will destroy their children if they split.
Right.
And they, for that purpose, will be willing to either not fight each other excessively or they will try and work things out.
Right.
Right. You do see lots of couples that will hold on till the kids move out. And I always feel like that's the worst thing you could ever do, because you destroy the foundation of those kids whenever you do it. It doesn't matter if they're 30 or 20 or whatever.
Right.
If you got problems as a couple, you should work on it right away. Holding off is not a good idea. But reconciling is awesome because it's working through your problems. It's learning to forgive one another, right? So, yeah, but I could totally see that. Having a shared business, which AKA would mean you'd lose your assets and your income if you split, yeah, that has consequences. Or, putting your children through the worst of the worst, yeah, it has consequences, right? So, yeah, I could see why people pull away from that one. So, yeah, I could see why they would have a higher chance of reconciling.
Yeah. To give you some stats on the cheating thing and all that, violence or abuse accounts for 34% of all divorces in all age groups, and extramarital affairs or cheating makes up 27% all divorces in all age groups.
Do you think these numbers are high, low? If you'd like, we can talk about each one individually. We've just often found that they mesh well together.
Yeah, violence or abuse, like aka verbal abuse even, right?
Yeah,
like
any form.
All of that is a surefire like knife to the heart of anyone in a marriage. Like it's pretty hard for people who are going through that to stay committed to one another, unless there's outside influences that are pushing and driving them to stay committed. Or if one person is a abuse victim themselves and they're used to that. I've seen that actually, which is the weirdest thing, that somebody would grow up in an abusive home to start with and they marry someone who's abusive. And so then they're used to that and they don't see any, like, they're almost desensitized. Yeah. Yeah. So they see it as normal.
Yeah.
And I've seen that actually in a buddy of mine who's like wanting to date this woman, and this woman that he's trying to be with, she's very can be very dysfunctional. And I was like, man, that's crazy. Why are you doing that? He's like, after, he explained all this stuff and I was like, why are you doing, she's crazy. He's like, this is normal. And I was like, what? Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. If I think about your history and your past growing up, yeah, you're used to that. Oh, now I get why you find her attractive. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Some similarity.
Yeah.
Everyone's always looking for something that reminds them of home, even if it's something bad.
Yeah.
When they're looking for someone, I've often noticed they're looking for even the smallest thing that'll be okay, this feels like what I had at home.
This feels good, or this feels normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't even have to feel good. It just has to feel normal sometimes.
So violence and abuse, if that's what people grew up in, I could see how that could be something that could go on like for a very long time and not cause a divorce. But yeah, if somebody's like, yeah, that's pretty nasty. Extramarital affairs, I mean, to me, that is so destructive to a marriage. I'm amazed that people can work through that they can actually pull off a marriage after there's been an affair. Because it's like the ultimate, it's the ultimate wound, right, to your spouse. Because you're pulling away from them and you're tying your heart into somebody else, right? You're breaking that unity, that oneness. So, yeah, I've seen it done though, and it takes an incredible amount of forgiveness. And when I say forgiveness, I mean it's not just once; it's like continual.
Yeah.
Because that wound continues to be reopened. It's very hard for that one to heal properly, right? So, yeah, I could see people who have an affair. They have to work. Their spouse has to work on forgiving them daily for the rest of that marriage. Like, because that's, you know, and it probably doesn't happen daily in the end, but it's happening seasonally for sure. So yeah, I can totally see that. I thought extramarital affairs would have made up more, actually, to be honest. Yeah, I would have thought extramarital by now probably would have been making up like 50% of all the divorces. So,
I mean, how many people push for divorce and their spouse doesn't realize that they've been cheated on?
yeah, or that there is something going on at any given moment, right?
Yeah, I wonder if this is like the full story. Like some spouses, like they're like, okay, the reason was I was cheating on you.
Yeah.
With this person who is now my new spouse.
Yeah.
Or if it's like, if this is like this is why both of them come out and say this is it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see, like, I would think most people would be not willing to admit that, because that would mean they're calling themselves a cheater, right? So if somebody's having an affair, they're not wanting to look bad. So they won't say they were probably seeing that person while that was going on, or that they had any type of, you know, affair type of relationship with that person. But as soon as they were split or separated, then they started seeing that person. And they were like, we weren't together anyways, right? But the truth is, no, you were emotionally tied into that person. You were seeking a relationship with that person, or had one, right? Maybe it wasn't physical yet, but it certainly was. You were desiring one another, right? So I could see like it being much higher than that. So
yeah. How is a marriage relationship different from other relationships that you have growing up in life, like friends, parents?
I find my marriage relationship pushes you. It pushes you harder than any relationship you ever had. Like, you can be really tight and close with buddies, right?
Yeah.
And as you go through life together, especially when you go through hard times with a buddy, you have each other's backs. You help each other out. You do fight with your buddies sometimes, because if you get close enough to them, you actually start to get in each other's hair a little bit, and it's inevitable. But with a spouse, you share like the most intimate of details, and probably hide some of the hardest things that are to hide, because you're scared of how your spouse will respond to things like that. But I would say a marriage relationship is probably, when God created Adam and he called everything good, right? Everything was good.
Mm-hmm.
Adam being alone was the first thing God said was not good, right? And he clearly said that it is not good, even though he had talked about everything being good. So that's interesting. Before there was sin in the world, that was declared. And marriage was instituted in creation, in perfection, before the fall of man, right? So it is made good, and God called it very good. That's the only thing he called very good, right? So marriage is the most like pinnacle relationship, I think, in our culture, in our world, in our history, in our creation. And so for me, it is the most demanding relationship by far, right? I can not call my brothers. I can not call my sisters. I can not call my parents. But if I neglect my wife, I'm neglecting myself too, right? Like it wounds me as well, right? So yeah, it definitely, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
That's good.
Yeah.
it's too bad Heather's not here, because I'm sure she would have had some other spin point on that one. So I will say though, Heather makes it very easy to be married. She's very easygoing. Like, I look at some of my buddies and their relationships, and I think, oh man, like that's a lot of work. Like, Heather is I'm very lucky. Let's just say that. So
Yeah, as someone who's been around your family on and off fairly frequently over the years, you and Mrs. Langelaar are definitely a very close couple. You guys are, well, even my dad was saying the other day when Seth and I got back to my place, he was talking about how it was unfortunate that you were unable to make it and not do this yesterday, but he was talking about how you guys are like just best friends.
Oh well, thanks for sharing that, man. Yeah.
Any advice for people who are getting into relationships, or maybe even have been married for years?
Advice. Oh, I can't really offer anything other than what I have learned in my own life. But if people are young and they're looking for a relationship, here's one, a couple pieces I've learned. So when I was in college, I dated a girl and we were pretty serious and we dated for quite a while. I thought we were going to get married and it all fell apart after 2 years. And so for me, I didn't have a good relationship with her family. I was, her and I were very close, but her family and I weren't, right? Not because of my choice, but because of just the way that our relationship was and the distance we had. And her parents didn't like that I lived so far away, and it just created a little bit of strife between them and me. I didn't make the effort to try and get to know them really well, right? If you're going to get to know someone and you have the intent of marrying them, get to know their family, right? Know them well, because that you are marrying them as well, right? You are really actually getting to become one of them as well. Right. So if you can't get along with their family, there's a good chance you're going to have some serious fights in the years to come. So, because as much as the person you're hanging out with says, I love you, you're still going to have to go there for Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter and all these other things. You're going to do all these family gatherings together. So you really should spend the time with them, with their family, so that you get to know them as a whole, as a family. That's one piece that I would totally recommend. If you can't pull that off, that's a good indication that that person might not be the right one for you. So, because you can make it through a lot of things, but the person you marry, if you can't get along with their family, you're going to see them for the rest of your life. If you're going to be married for the rest of your life, so because family is everything, right? So, that's one piece of advice I would have, I guess. So when I met Heather, after that relationship in college broke up, before I had met Heather, I had already committed in my heart, Lord, I want to know the person that you want me to marry. I want to know their family really well. And so when I first met Heather, I'd start off by saying, hey, let's go play cards with your mom and dad, or hey, let's go do this with your family, or let's, really intentional to try and just be a part of her family, to see it as her family. I loved every part of it. I totally loved her family when we got into it. And it helped build good relationships with them, with me, right? Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And
thank you for letting us into your home.
Yeah. That's a pleasure.
Great to sit in these swivel chairs.
Yeah. I feel bad that Heather wasn't able to finish off with us, but
it's all right.
Yeah. It's good to have this conversation with you guys.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good conversation. I'm really glad you guys are doing this, because you're asking some good questions, right? And you're throwing out some real deep, you're going after the deep stuff that makes up these relationships. So I hope it blesses you guys when you guys work on relationships, or if you're working on relationships. So
it's part of it. It's been cool to listen to all these
it's been
different perspectives. People, same question, you get different perspectives from everyone.
Yeah, that's true. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being
useless?
No, really mild, and 10 being absolutely crazy. How would you rate this overall interview?
Actually,
in comparison to your worst and your best.
That's hard, because
that's tough.
Yeah, that's
because there's crazy ones, right? You get crazy answers, or you get people kind of or did you only ask very strong couples who aren't?
No,
we've asked engaged people, and we haven't had anyone who's really, really out there.
Yeah.
I'd say
we haven't had any crazies.
Yeah. Average. I don't know.
Yeah, this has been it's hard for me to stack the different discussions we've had into a rank of this was number 1, this was 3s.
Or no, like on a level of crazy. That's what I mean. Not as in which is your best one, which is your worst one. What I mean is like difficult, hard to work with, or sidewinder answers to that was very non-difficult, very easy.
We've never discussed a couple's children's underwear before. That's the first.
Yeah, you got a point.
Nice. So we're topping crazy. That's awesome. Nice.
Could be up there.
I guess they top the crazy.
Yeah.
But
Dylan will never live this down.
Yeah.
Dylan, you're now internet famous.
I'm sad that's what we brought to the show for you guys. But that's a good thing.
To be fair, no one else brought their kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say this was like an 8.
Oh, good.
8 out of 10. I
for
like
crazy.
It.
Nice. Yeah, it's good.
Crazy good. Yeah.
Should we do an outro of some sort?
Yeah, I guess I'll outro us. Thank you to the Langelaars. This is Aiden Wolfe and Seth Wieler saying goodbye for now. Hope you guys enjoyed wherever you're listening from. God bless.